The Ashes of Silence. In the heart of a nameless city, where the river flowed sluggishly beneath bridges corroded by time, and where the houses leaned into one another like beggars collapsing on the edge of a road, there lived a woman whose name had been long forgotten by the registers of wealth and society, but whose soul carried within it the majesty of tragedy. She was known only as Eléonore, and she worked at the factory by the riverbank, where the smoke rose like black sermons to a sky deafened by centuries of injustice. Each dawn she awoke in a room scarcely larger than a coffin, its walls damp with sorrow, its single window facing the skeleton of a ruined church. Her wages were coins of dust, her meals shadows of bread, and yet in her eyes lingered a fire not even the soot of labor could extinguish. It was in that same city that Julien, a young teacher of philosophy, wandered like a pilgrim searching for meaning among the ruins of human cruelty. He was neither rich nor poor, but suspended in that limbo where men think too much, feel too deeply, and accomplish too little. His books were stained with rain, his coat frayed at the edges, yet his heart was vast, wounded, and luminous. He lectured to children of laborers, speaking of liberty and justice with a fervor that could have kindled revolutions if only ears had listened. But the world, intoxicated by profit and lulled by misery, remained deaf. Their encounter was a collision of silence. On a winter evening, the factory bell tolled its metallic dirge, releasing a tide of exhausted bodies into the streets. Eléonore staggered under the weight of her day, her hands raw from iron, her breath carrying the acrid taste of machines. Julien, who had lingered on the bridge in contemplation of the river's sorrow, saw her stumble and nearly fall into the mire. He caught her hand. It was a hand both fragile and powerful, sculpted by suffering. Their eyes met. In hers, he read an entire book of grief. In his, she glimpsed an abyss of compassion. Neither spoke, for words are too brittle to carry such recognition.
From that evening, their lives became entangled in a tapestry woven by unseen fingers. Julien would wait near the gates of the factory, not as a suitor waits for a beloved, but as a brother waits for a sister lost in the storm. Eléonore, though wary of men whose promises were but masks for cruelty, felt in him no hunger but the hunger to share burdens. Slowly, silence grew into dialogue, dialogue into confession. She told him of her childhood, orphaned by a fire that devoured her parents and left her with nothing but scars invisible to the flesh. He told her of his failures, his inability to change a world that seemed carved in stone, and of the loneliness that gnawed at the marrow of his days. Love, that ancient conspirator, crept between them like a thief in the night. Not the love of poetry recited at banquets, nor the love painted on canvases, gilded by wealth, but the love that is born in alleys where despair reigns, the love that grows not from abundance but from ruin. Their meetings became a sanctuary. Beneath the broken arches of the ruined church, among statues with missing faces and altars stripped of divinity, they sat together, whispering not of paradise but of survival. Yet society, that monstrous leviathan, tolerates no such sanctuary. The factory owner, a man whose fortune was built upon the crushed bones of the poor, observed Eléonore with the calculating eye of possession. He had long desired her, not for her beauty, though beauty still clung to her like the last rose upon a winter thorn, but for the perverse pleasure of owning what misery had not yet destroyed. He summoned her to his office, a chamber lined with velvet curtains and portraits of ancestors who had devoured nations. There he offered her gold, promises of rest, and the vile insinuations of power. She refused. He threatened. She refused again. And thus he cast his malice upon her, reducing her hours, withholding her meager pay, until hunger coiled like a serpent in her belly. Julien, upon hearing this, raged like a prophet. He stormed the office of the tyrant, speaking words that trembled with the thunder of truth. These workers are not your slaves. Their blood is not the ink of your wealth. The tyrant laughed. For what are words against coins? What is justice against property? Julien was dismissed with contempt, and Eléonore was warned that should she consort again with such agitators, she would find herself cast into the streets.
But love is a defiance greater than law. Despite threats, they met still in the ruins, clinging to one another as if their embrace could shield them from the avalanche of fate. In his arms, she felt the echo of a home she had never known. In her eyes, he saw the reason philosophy had been invented, not to explain the world, but to heal it. One night, as the city drowned in fog, a fire erupted in a factory. Whether born of accident or of vengeance, no one knows. Flames licked the sky, devouring walls, machines, and souls. Workers were trapped, their cries piercing the darkness like daggers. Eléonore, who had already escaped the inferno, turned back upon hearing the screams of her companions. Julien tried to hold her, but she tore herself free and plunged into the blaze. For hours she pulled bodies from the furnace of destruction, her hair singed, her hands blistered, her lungs seared by smoke. At last, weakened, she collapsed beneath a falling beam. Julien, in despair, rushed into the chaos and dragged her out, his body battered, his heart breaking. She lingered between life and death in his arms. Around them the city burned. Above them the heavens remained indifferent. Her breath came in shallow fragments, each one a farewell. Julien, do not let them bury me in silence. Tell them I was alive. With that, the final light departed from her eyes, leaving him with ashes where once there had been fire. The days that followed were a procession of cruelty. The tyrant declared her death an accident, an unfortunate consequence of negligence. The workers mourned, but dared not revolt. Julien, stricken with grief yet aflame with resolve, transformed his sorrow into a weapon. He wrote, he spoke, he marched. He became the voice she had asked for, the living testimony of her existence. Remember, Eléonore, for she is every woman crushed by hunger, every soul extinguished by injustice, every flame devoured by the darkness of greed. Years passed. Revolutions came and went. Banners rose and fell. Kings and tyrants exchanged thrones like gamblers trading coins. Julien grew old, his body frail but his spirit unyielding. And in the silence of his solitary nights, he would return to the ruined church, now further eroded by time, and sit before the altar where once she had smiled through tears. He would whisper to the shadows, "Eléonore, I have not forgotten. You are the pulse in my words, the blood in my protests, the light in the darkness of this city." And so it was that a woman who lived without wealth, without recognition, whose name was etched nowhere upon marble, became immortal in the memory of one man's love and in the echo of his defiance. For history is not only the record of kings and battles, but the quiet testimony of hearts that dared to burn in the darkness. And among those hearts, hers was the brightest, though it ended in ashes.